President Zelenskky has rejected a draft giving Washington half of the income in exchange for military aid already provided by the U.S.
Fighting near a Ukrainian village on the front lines last year. Tank battles raged above ground that geologists estimate holds hundreds of millions of dollars of lithium. That's just one of the resources that Ukraine has significant deposits of. There are also deposits of graphite, titanium, zirconium, and rare earth metals spread across Ukraine. Some in the areas controlled by Russia, but much in the territory Ukraine itself still controls. Potentially worth more than $10 trillion, making Ukraine potentially a very rich country. The White House sent the Treasury Secretary to Ukraine to sign a deal last week. An alleged leaked draft said the U.S. would get half the money Ukraine earns from mining, as well as oil and gas resources, ports, and other infrastructure. The Trump deal has been compared to the Treaty of Versailles imposed on Germany after it lost World War I, which forced Germany to pay what would now be hundreds of billions of dollars in reparations. The amount Ukraine would end up paying is far greater in adjusted terms, despite the fact that Russia is the aggressor in the current war. Zelenskky refused to sign, and then again refused to sign a modified version of the deal when he met Vice President J.D. Vance in Munich.
The document was unclear. The only thing that was clear was that we had to give up 50% of everything listed. By the way, we're not afraid of doing this, but there was no mention of security guarantees.
Zelensky's refusal has infuriated Trump, who's called him a dictator, and in private has reportedly expressed a desire to cut all aid to Ukraine.
Look, President Trump is obviously very frustrated right now with President Zelenskky. The fact that that he hasn't come to the table, that he hasn't been willing to take this opportunity that we have offered. I think he eventually will get to that point, and I hope so very quickly.
The Trump team sees minerals as compensation for past and possible future aid. Ukraine sees its mineral wealth as its path forward to rebuilding after the war eventually ends. Ukraine can't afford to alienate the U.S. and lose its backing, but fears that without security guarantees against further Russian aggression, it might get nothing in return for signing away its wealth. Meanwhile, the U.S. has reportedly updated its deal to address Ukraine's concerns, potentially making it easier for Zelenskky to sign once the war of words dies down.
But does Ukraine have any choice but to agree to this minerals deal with the U.S.? I asked Gracelin Baskaran. She's director of the Critical Minerals Security Program at the Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington, D.C.
Zelenskky has been an advocate of a critical minerals cooperation agreement, and it's been discussed prior to President Trump taking office. He doesn't have much of a choice from a financial position, given that for the last 2 years, Republicans have been hesitant in terms of the amount of aid going towards Ukraine. However, he's not opposed to a minerals agreement with the United States in which Ukraine offers strategic reserves in exchange for military support and security guarantees. It's more of the how that's currently in conversation.
Ukraine rejected Washington's first attempt to strike a deal. How far apart would you say that both sides are right now? Or do you think they're finding common ground?
Absolutely. Moving in the right direction. Zelenskky obviously refused to sign the initial agreement because it didn't have a security guarantee. Essentially, what it would be doing is it would just be paying back the assistance that was already received. And also with the $500 billion of Ukrainian military compensation, Zelenskky claimed that U.S. military aid was nowhere near that $500 billion. So we're moving to a more neutral or a more balanced ground now for both sides.
And Gracelin, I'm sure you've been following the news. You've been hearing what the president the U.S. has said about the Ukrainian president and vice versa. This bitter public feud between these two leaders, is that putting this critical minerals deal in jeopardy?
Tension that's coming from the current tone of negotiations, right? Right now, it's quite antagonistic. However, it does appear that it will move ahead, given that it is in the best interest of Ukraine. Ultimately, not having financial assistance cut off is not an option for Ukraine. So while it's currently quite tense, both sides continue to come to the table, revising terms to find consensus.
And I'm wondering, if you look around the world, how unusual or how usual is it to have a critical minerals deal like what is being discussed between Washington and Ukraine? I mean, critical minerals, access in exchange for aid and security.
That's a great question. So for the United States, this is a bit of an unprecedented approach. We haven't really used a resource for aid exchange in the past. However, what we do know is that it's a tried and tested tool in the Chinese playbook. The best example I can give you is about 25 years ago, after the conflict in the Democratic Republic of Congo, China went in and did a $3 billion swap. They did $3 billion of infrastructure aid in exchange for access to $93 billion of resources like copper and cobalt. And it's what gave China a foothold in the DRC that continues today. And it was at a time when other countries did not want to give the DRC capital. Mm-hmm. And it was aligned to their long-term strategic focus. So we do see that there is precedent where other countries have used resource for aid swaps. It's just not an American tool. It's
interesting, too, to see the Trump administration taking a page from the Chinese book on how to make a deal. Gracelin, Baskaran, it's good to get your input tonight. We appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.